All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Laura Ann Schweitzer. I have the privilege of co-moderating today's panel. We are going to be looking at how investing in cacao quality and flavor and value can have benefits throughout the supply chain. But specifically, we are going to invite our panelists to really look at and dig into and share how this type of investment can impact farmers and how it can be used as a tool for alleviating cacao farmer poverty. So we have the session divided into 3 segments today. We'll be starting with a keynote presentation. Then we will have a first panel of experts. And then we will immediately transition into a second panel. So we'll be asking everyone to keep your questions till the end, and we will conclude with time for Q&A. So first, I would like to introduce my co-moderator, Ama Niami Moyambun. I will pass the virtual mic to her to introduce our first presenter. Thanks, Ama.
Thank you kindly, Laura. Our keynote speaker today needs very little introduction at WCF. He's one of the founding members, and in the nearly 20 years that WCF has been working, he has been passionate and consistent about producing countries and the industry, understanding the flavor of the planting materials that are being developed and distributed to farmers. Gary and Guittard Chocolate have been equally passionate about farmers, understanding how their practices and their passion bring out the beautiful flavor of their cocoa and how they can use that to access premium markets. Through their current Cultivate Better program, they are balancing this passion with protecting flavor with equal commitment to cocoa farmers, their communities, and the environment. Gary is the fourth generation of his family to lead Guittard Chocolates that was founded in 1868. And I must say that I have met Gary, and he's the youngest veteran that I have met. He has so much passion and is still very excited to talk about flavor after all these years. I'm honored to introduce our keynote speaker, Gary Guittard. The floor for you, Gary.
Great. Thanks very much, Ama. Thanks, Ama. I appreciate the introduction. I'd like to start this session a little bit with a short story, a story that I think depicts some of our collaborations between industry, government, and farmers. We've been at it for a few years now, and these are 3 important groups that are trying to solve some difficult problems that face the industry. And I think each of these groups at times have been left wanting, have been left unfulfilled. And I think this story depicts a little bit of that. So a man comes home from working on his farm. He's been working all day, he's tired, and he's hungry. And he asks his wife, "What's for dinner?" And his wife says, "Nothing." He says, "Nothing? That's what we had last night." And she says, "I made enough for 2 nights." Thank you for joining me today on today's session on investing in quality, flavor, and value to help in the fight to lift farmer poverty and really adding a sense of self-worth where art and science can collaborate. These 2 panels will stimulate some interesting ideas and provoke thoughts on future steps that may not exactly be the same for you that are as will be presented today, because all countries are particularly different. Though the goal may be the same, the path and timing may be different for each country. Of course, there is no one size that fits all. Many of these ideas and programs certainly depend on a certain level of infrastructure to support each market supply chain in a structure like roads, traceability, transparency. So many of these thoughts may be a bridge too far, or maybe no bridge at all. But that shouldn't deter us one bit. With a goal in mind, there may be many paths to attainment, maybe as many as there are cocoa seeds on a farm during harvest. It is attainable. It takes hard work to build this infrastructure and to support your path. I believe that flavor and quality can point the way and be a foundation for an important part of the infrastructure to a sustainable future. Certainly in regards to differentials in competition. The first step is knowledge of chocolate. And with the advent of the craft chocolate industry, tools have been developed not only to ferment small batches of cocoa beans, but to make small batches of fine chocolate. Reawakening the days of the mano and the metate tools used 7,000 years ago, and maybe not so long ago, well, 200 or 300 years ago, by Europeans when cocoa was assessed and disseminated around the world into areas of Venezuela, the Caribbean, to Java and to Africa. Somehow we lost this simple tool in assessing what cocoas to plant. You don't need a few tons of cocoa and a chocolate factory. This has allowed us to return to a path of understanding and experiencing the diverse flavors of cocoa. The flavor of your country, the flavor of your region, the flavor on your farm. These are the means where you can make knowledgeable decisions on where you are and where you want to go in the world of flavor and genetics and breeding your future cocoa. Most countries have collections that contain treasures of cocoa flavor to explore. Or you can simply use these tools to decide whether a 3, 5, or 7-day fermentation is better for a clone. It takes it out of the hit and miss arena and into being able to make knowledgeable decisions on what planting material tastes fantastic, what planting material maybe doesn't taste so great, what fits the character of your cocoa or adds dimension, and can help your present flavor from incremental degradation. It's a word I really like and I think is going on in the cocoa world today, where questionable planting material is planted, and over time these small incremental changes change a country's overall flavor, affecting their certainly their differentials in their ability to compete. And by the time it affects their flavor, it's too late. Remember, your flavor has historical roots, so protect it. Remember, flavor has value. And like all commodities, cocoa is subject to the laws of supply and demand. And when following this law, sometimes we get caught up in the fine points and miss the big picture. Sometimes we actually see the big picture and want to manipulate it without really understanding the fine points that make it up. It's my belief that the reason West Africa is 65 to 70% of the world consumption is because it tastes really good. Embraced by all consumers, there is none like it with its deep chocolate flavor and aroma. It goes with all ingredients, unlike many cocos, and even some very expensive ones. These cocoa genetics were brought there because they tasted good. Don't lose it just for disease resistance and productivity. With these new tools, you can have all three: disease, resistance, productivity, and fine flavor. With the ACI and ACI2, the programs funded by USAID and in conjunction with the WCF, flavor labs have been established in Ghana, the Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Cameroon, and Java. Ghana was the first and has done some incredible work in the 7 years since its inception. Did anybody actually hear about or see the Ghana Cocoa Awards? That's all about building and rewarding flavor and quality. Countries are empowered to make their own decisions on how and where they want to develop flavor. This is important, I think. If you are in the business of growing and selling cocoa, do yourself a big favor and learn about the cocoa world you live in and compete in. Today, our first panel will bring some science into the equation, the establishment of the Cocoa of Excellence and the development of international standards for the assessment of cocoa quality and flavor. Cocoa's incredibly complicated flavor that up until today has really defied standardizing. These standards were developed in conjunction with the Cocoa of Excellence. Tasting cocoa for standards requires training and experience. These experiences of off flavor developed during post-harvest practices and a knowledge of the diverse cocoa flavors grown throughout the world, this takes flavor from the subjective to the objective. Who knows what over-fermented or under-fermented cocoa tastes like in a finished product? And how many have tried to combine the two, thinking that the average would taste good? In the second panel, we'll look at two countries, Colombia, which has many different genetic and flavor that are separated geographically, and how they go about rewarding flavor and quality. The Dominican Republic will also talk about their fine flavor, and I also like the Dominican Republic in the fact that it has two classes of cocoa, unfermented and fermented. I think this certainly changes the supply-demand issues within a country and as far as supplying in the world. I'm sure everybody can remember when under-fermented Indonesian cocoa was a large part of the world grind. Of course, this would require a robust infrastructure and traceability, and in my opinion, this is an interesting way to affect supply. I bet you'd have to do the math on that, and as far as traceability, and need the infrastructure to support it. But we'll hear from some co-ops that have focused on quality and flavor, and we'll also have a presentation from an East African co-op that demands quite an amazing premium for its very unique flavored cocoa. Well, this is an overview of our discussion today. Lots of ideas on the way countries, co-ops approach the idea of flavor and quality as it translates to farmer equity. There are no easy answers, and it will take all stakeholders working together to develop processes to reach your goals. You can't just cast your faith to the wind and hope it lands in a fertile field. Well, the table is set, so let's get it into the kitchen and go to work. Some dishes may not be palatable to everyone, but I can guarantee the chocolate dessert will be enjoyed by all. Thank you.
Gary, thank you so much for starting this session with that great keynote and laying out some of the other topics we'll be diving into in the subsequent panels. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Wonderful. Well, we are going to move as a group now into our first panel of experts. Our first panel is going to be taking a look at some of the tools and systems that allow for systematic cacao evaluation to move past preference and to truly move into systems and standards. And our first panel will also begin to guide us closer to our central question of looking at how this work can truly impact farmers. So it's my privilege to introduce our first three panelists. We will be starting with Mr. Ed Seguin of Seguin. Yes, Mr. Ed Seguin. Hello, welcome, Ed, of Seguin Cacao, will be presenting first for us. Ed, I'd like to pass the mic to you to please share your screen for your presentation. We all look forward to learning from you.
Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. This is a story about a war. Information, intelligence wins wars. The same is true in the cocoa world. Now, before we get too far here, I want to take us back through a time portal 120 years earlier than we are today. And in that portal, I want to go back to the year 1900. The landscape is very different than we see today. The heart of cocoa growing was in the Americas. It was in South America and the Caribbean basin. It was the old viceroyalty of New Granada, today's Ecuador, Colombia, Panama, Venezuela, that was created in 1542. The landscape was different then. Example, in Ecuador, the provinces of Manabí and Los Rios were the heartland of cocoa production in Ecuador. And as the heartland, they got a new name. That area became known as Little Paris, primarily because the lands were held by large landowners, estate owners, who had a residence in Paris. And when they went to Paris every year, they sold their own cocoa. They knew what it tasted like, and they sold it to customers based on their flavors. That was an interesting year. In those times, the information about how a cocoa tasted flowed back to the farm because the farmer was the owner of the whole linkage. Today, over the last 120 years, the linkage has been broken. It doesn't work anymore. And by that, I mean the information about how something is not communicated. The learning is lost. The understanding on the part of the farmer is therefore missing, and change does not take place. The future without that actually looks pretty bleak, because we have been looking at Gary's incremental degradation in the cocoa field. If you ask companies that have been in fine flavor work for decades, they will be the first to tell you there's been a diminution of the quality overall across the world. We've lost origins, and for origins that have classic names, we've lost much of what they were. And you have to search now for a flavor. It is possible to create that linkage. That's what Cocoa of Excellence is all about. It began in 2009 with its first edition. Gary sent me to London to have a meeting, and I and several other individuals were part of the founders of the Cocoa of Excellence program. It's designed to celebrate flavor, because flavor has value. Now, let me give you a case in point. In 2017, we awarded in Cocoa of Excellence an international cocoa award to a gentleman from a regal plantation in India. It was a grand night, and he was delighted at the award that he received. I was in our booth the next day, and he came by the booth and said, "Ed, I got to tell you, I just sold the rest of my crop." And he listed the premium that he got, and he was excited. Well, time went on. I was excited for him, so I clapped and we celebrated the moment. The next year in February at Chacoa, he and his mother and his sister and his wife came and found me and said, "Ed, I got to tell you." I said, "What?" He first asked me if I remembered him. Of course I remembered him. Anybody that's that excited is memorable. He said, Ed, I have forward sold next year's crop because of the award. Flavor has value. It makes a difference. Now, the difficulty with flavor today is if you send a sample of cocoa to 10 different companies, you will get 10 different answers. 2 of them will say, it's wonderful, I love it, can I have it tomorrow? 2 of them will say, are you stupid for sending me that? That's terrible, I don't like that. And then 6 of them will say, oh, okay, that's interesting, tell me what else you got. Communication has not occurred. Understanding does not exist. Change will therefore never occur. It is for this reason that the Cocoa of Excellence program helped give birth to the ISCQF. It just rolls right off the tongue. International Standards for the Assessment of Cocoa Quality and Flavor. Its intention is to be a common language, a common understanding throughout the cocoa value chain of flavor. It's not a preference. It's a statement of what the flavor is. And in that sense, it has something that is quite unique in the history of cocoa tasting amongst all the scientific literature, because it has benchmark standards that specify what is an 8 cocoa intensity flavor, what is a 4 floral note in cocoa. It's not a preference. Many people may like acidity in cocoa, particularly a fruit acidity, and it differentiates between fruit acidity and acetic acidity. Others may not like acidity in the cocoa. It is not a preference, it is a description. And in that description, the use of these standards gives you a benchmark. There are presently 8 standards in the Cocoa of Excellence repertoire. We are looking at expanding that to include greater dimension. And we're also looking at making them more available, because up to now, they've only been available if you're in the technical committee of Cocoa of Excellence. But we know that more needs to occur as we try to formalize the program and make it of effect for the global supply chain. An example of this is one of our codes, the 09796, which is a standard for rich, smooth chocolate flavor. It's got a 7.5 cocoa, a 4.3 bitterness, a 4.1 astringency, and it's got a lot of brown notes that you see in the roast degree. It is about what cocoa, woody, and roast is all about. It's a beautiful sample. It is the kind of tradition that Gary just spoke of. Now, you can visually display this in this wheel down here at the bottom left, and you can have fun taking a whole bunch of cocos and kind of fanning through and see how that wheel changes. But it involves, because it's benchmark, precise flavor evaluation. Again, it's a statement of what is, not a statement of what do I like. And this is we divide attributes into core and complementary attributes. Complementary may or may not be present, may or may not be significant. In some cases, you may be looking for a complementary attribute. In other cases, you may want it to be very neutral. If you would, that beautiful smooth canvas, nicely gessoed, upon which you are going to paint your masterpiece. You want this for a blend. It may be that you want rich cocoa, low balanced bitterness and astringency with this rich brown note. And what you want to do is enchant your customer. They put it in their mouth. They bring it to the mouth. They inhale. They pick up the aroma of cocoa. They put it in your mouth, a few bites, and all of a sudden they close their eyes and fall into a Zen reverie, having been enveloped by the curtains of rich chocolate. The purpose of this is to let every element of the value chain understand what it is, because once you understand it, it lets the producer become that entrepreneur, the guy from Regal Plantations in India, and start enchanting his or her customers. And with that, I conclude, because cocoa is life and flavor has value. Value to the consumer, value to the producer of the chocolate, value to the exporter, and there must be value returned to the farmer.
Ed, thank you so much for really highlighting for us the importance of knowledge and communication, feedback loops. That was a great success story you shared, and we also really enjoyed seeing, the future of standardization and allowing potential, for cacao farmers to have more consistent results instead of the 10 different analysis they may be currently seeing. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm really honored to hand the virtual microphone over to our second panelist, Brigitte Laliberte of Cocoa of Excellence. We look forward to hearing from you and learning from you. Thanks, Brigitte.
Thank you very much, Laura, and of course, thank you, Gary and Ed, for such wonderful introduction. I feel like I can just dive straight into explaining a little bit more about the tools. So Ed did a great job talking about why we need a common language, and this is the website where you can download for free the versions of protocols that are available in English, French, and Spanish. And we require that you register just so that we can keep in contact and hear about your experience with these first drafts. And basically what they are is, if we look at the left side, is that all the different steps of preparing a sample for sensory evaluation also matter. They can impact the resulting flavor. So we need to describe these steps very carefully, because if you introduce a variation in the roasting or you introduce a variation in the different protocols, then you introduce a variation also in the final result. So you have protocols on the sample preparation, the protocol on the physical quality evaluation, as well as the sensory evaluation of three main products: unroasted cocoa beans, cocoa liquor or cocoa mass, and chocolate. And these first drafts are available, and we're working on the protocols for chocolate sensory evaluation, and then general guidelines, as well as protocols for measuring cocoa butter content. And we will also work on future ones once this set is completed. And just to tell you that we have at the moment more than 1,000 registered users from 92 countries and 6,458 individual downloads. So this is not somebody just looking at the website, but it's actually downloading these protocols. So what we think that we are very keen in collecting is the feedback of the people who are downloading them, who are looking at them, maybe implementing them. Please send us feedback, tell us what you think of them, because they are still very much in progress. We will be putting them into a manual next year, and then we will make sure that they become a little bit stable with some yearly updates on key things that need to be further looked at. So when we look at these tools, what I think it's allowing is for that feedback to producers, and also for defining that differentiation that we're looking for. If we have today a situation where an estimated 10% of cocoa is traded as fine flavor and the rest is traded so-called as bulk flavor, as bulk or commodity cocoa, what we're looking at is revealing through these tools and through the knowledge shared with producers and feedback, a portion of what is maybe today traded as bulk, but may actually already exist as a higher quality. So that's one of the first steps, is to look at how we can reveal that superior quality cocoa and increase income and capacity of farmers to be better connected to the market. And so some of the, looking at the sector of coffee, of course, wine, olive oil, and so on, we did quite a deep review of these sectors and the key success factors that have taken place for those commodities to allow this differentiation were four. One was the promotion of excellence. Many of those have also awards and competitions that reward the growers of the raw material. A second step is a common language. A fourth step is to really build that capacity and have institutional support, and then enabling environment. This is the areas that we want collectively with all of the partners, because one thing that I need to absolutely stress is this initiative is done with a huge amount of different partners that are involved in this sector. And it's very important to continue building that capacity, because no single institute is able to build that capacity. It has to be continued to be shared, to be a collective effort, and to build on our respective strengths. So with this, I will pass on back to Laura for the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Brigitte, thank you so much. That's really great also to have all the information for us all to access these cocoa quality standards. All of us of CHO have really enjoyed the website, enjoyed the downloads. We've learned a lot, and I just can't encourage everyone enough to visit the website, take a look, and be in touch with Brigitte and the various partners working on this initiative. It's really great. Wonderful. So our third and final panelist for this first segment is Virginie Detournay from Puratos. And this is a wonderful presentation. We're going to hear from a private sector company, specifically how they are looking at quality and applying it in their supply chain for farmer benefit. Virginie?
Thank you so much, Laura, and thank you, Gary, Ed, and Brigitte, for the very inspiring presentation so far. And indeed, do you see the screen correctly? You do not see my screen?
We do. We see it great.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'd like to take the opportunity to share some insights on the Cacao-Trace program and how does it contribute to the farmers' revenue and the farmers' livelihoods. So Cacao-Trace is Puratos' sustainable cocoa sourcing program, which focuses on three main pillars. First of all, it focuses on value creation. Secondly, on the sharing of this value with the farmers and their communities. And thirdly, it's about creating awareness and visibility so that we can respect our strong commitments done towards the communities and our customers. These three pillars, they support each other, they feed each other, and they create a virtuous circle. But so how does Cacao-Trace really impact the farmer's revenue? Well, first of all, we need to understand what the farmer's revenue is. Basically is the price of the commodity sold multiplied by the quantity sold. So it is represented by the surface under the curve that you see on the graph. So if you want to increase the farmer's revenue, well, it could be, you could think it's very straightforward. We just need to increase the price of the commodity. But unfortunately, it's not that simple. As if you increase the price, you will sell less volume. The basic rules of economics apply. Also, if you decide to sell a bigger quantity, you will sell it at a lower price. So the surface under the curve will not be impacted significantly, and therefore the farmer's revenue is not impacted significantly. So what do we have as a solution for with Cacao-Trace? Well, we want to leave the commodity curve and create value. This way, we can sell the same quantity, but at a higher price. And therefore, the farmer's revenue will be impacted. How is this possible? Well, thanks to a higher quality, we can create superior tasting chocolates that are valued by our consumers and that are therefore willing to pay a higher price. So now that we have created value, how do we share it back with the farmers? Well, on top of the farm gate price, which represents the standard farmer's revenue, we pay a quality premium and a chocolate bonus, which is a very innovative concept. For each kilogram of chocolate sold, 10 cents are directly paid back to the farmer. So now that we understand why value creation and quality is so important, you may wonder, how do we create this value and what does impact quality? Well, we believe that we should master and control all the steps that are important in the supply chain. 3 of them are already well known in the chocolate industry, being farming practices, the roasting process, and the chocolate recipe. However, with Cacao-Trace, we go one step further and we control and master one more fundamental process, which is the fermentation of cocoa beans. How do we do this? Well, by implementing post-harvest centers where the cocoa beans are fermented in a very professional and controlled way. So in order to explain a bit further what is the added value of these post-harvest centers and how do we work together with the farmer communities, I'd like to make a small parallel with another product that we all know very well, which is a product of fermentation, wine. And I'd like you to imagine that you, together with 3 other friends, are harvesting grapes from the same field. And you're asked to make a wine out of it. You will call it Chateau Friendship. And in order to do this, you will share equally the harvest between the 4 of you, and you will all ferment individually the grapes. And I have 2 questions for you. Do you believe that all 4 of you will reach the same quality? And secondly, do you believe it is the best process to reach the best possible quality to produce together? Well, the answers to these 2 questions is probably no. Why? Because fermentation is a very complex process, and probably one of your friends knows a bit about fermentation and will achieve very good results. However, another one doesn't know anything about fermentation and will reach mediocre quality or even poorer. Or maybe he doesn't have the correct infrastructure to perform the fermentation. So when you will be producing your Chateau Friendship, you will blend your wines and you will be blending different fluctuating quality of wine. So finally, is it the best strategy to create the best quality? Would it not be better to give all the grapes to the friend that controls the process and that knows the process? This way, as a team, you can produce the best quality that you can produce together. So it's exactly what we are doing with our Cacao-Trace post-harvest centers. We work together with the farmer communities to harvest the best possible quality of cocoa beans. But afterwards, once the harvest is done, we give the cocoa beans to the person who controls and knows about the fermentation process. And it is done in our post-harvest centers, where we have the good infrastructure, where we adapt the process in the best possible way, and where we train our people on the process. This is how we can reach a better quality and very importantly, in a very consistent way. And lastly, I'd like to share how fermentation can impact taste of the product, and how, for example, with an Ivory Coast origin, we are able to create complex flavor and aromas, because with our Ivory Coast origin beans that are fermented on our post-harvest center, we are able to produce delicate aromas such as dried fruit and fresh fruits that are found back in our cocoa liquor and in our dark chocolates, but there are typically flavor notes that are not found back in a standard Ivory Coast origin. So it is a small example to show how we can create value by controlling and mastering the fermentation process. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Virginie. We really appreciate learning a bit more about the work Piratos is doing, the Cacao-Trace program, and specifically the premiums going back to farmers, both for quality and the innovative chocolate bonus. We really appreciate learning all of that from you. Well, this was a wonderful panel to get us started to learn about the tools, learn about the real effort to become more standardized and rigorous in the assessment of what is, the flavors, the quality in the cacao, and also begin to learn about some of the impacts that is having for farmers in the form of premiums. I will now pass the microphone to my co-moderator, Ms. Ama Nyame Oyabun, and we'll really get into where the rubber meets the road as we learn from her panelists who are working directly with cacao farmers around the world. Ama.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you, everybody. This was a great first panel. And I'm very happy that we finished with Virginie, because then we've heard from the users. We are going to now hear from the producers. And then right from Virginie's story, we hear how they are impacted by the quality premiums, what market linkages we can create for existing beans. So we're going to hear from producers from different countries. We will have Tanzania, Dominican Republic, we have Colombia, we have Ivory Coast. So they can share with us different perspectives and different experiences they are having with quality premiums. We're going to start with our first. I'm going to share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, it's visible, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. We're going to start with Luca Chocolate. Mr. Francisco Gomez.
Okay. Thank you, Ama. And thank you, everybody. I just would like to share with you a couple of ideas that the people on the panel asked me to develop. Please, next, Ama. Okay, the first thing, the next slide, please. Okay, first thing is talking about flavor. Our company is making chocolate for more than 100 years. 100 years ago, we didn't know that we have fine flavor cocoa. Just we have the cacao, very, very good cacao. And with that product, with those beans, we produce our main brand at that time, Luker chocolate. But probably you know that in Colombia, the main business is drinking chocolate. But the magic of our product is just 100% cocoa mass. Then we have to develop and maintain the profile for a product during 100 years, more than 100 years, keeping the same flavor profile. Like Virginie mentioned about wine, we can have a slight variation during the year, but the heart of the flavor is quite the same during the years. Then we develop a kind of a skill, internal skill to blend the beans. And we had to develop like a 50 recipes with different beans from Colombia to maintain the flavor profile. And with that skill, we developed a new knowledge. Back in 2010, more or less, we profiled our cacao in Colombia, and we distinguished, or we described, we founded 4 different single origins, every one with a special profile. And those beans are made with the genetical material from Colombia. We keep the material in Colombia. We have our own farm for producing vegetal material, seedling material. Then we can sell to the farmer, to deliver to the farmer, and to use in our own plantation the same cacao matching the criteria we have for our profiles. Then we can maintain our normal, we can say normal Luker drinking chocolate, but also we could develop an international business in fine flavor cocoa based on those origins and the blends of the origin plus the Colombian basic blend. Next, please. That is the breeding we did with the beans, and now how we link that to quality and quality money for the farmers. Let me explain. This is the way we buy the cacao in Colombia. You can see, like in the middle with the yellow color, the base price cocoa. The base price cocoa is a standard cocoa that meets some criteria. For example, humidity 8%, fermented beans 70%, slaty beans 15%, raw material 0.2%, and low grade beans 1%. This is a standard cacao. Probably this standard is very high for many countries in the world, but it's our standard to make our Luker chocolate. But to compensate the labor or the job that the farmers are doing in the post-harvest handling, we have a premium for humidity between 7 and 8%. It means we have an additional percentage for every point we have in less humidity below 8. The same way for fermentation, which is the more important process for the flavor, we compensate additional money to the farmer between 70 and 85%. Again, the same slaty beans, we have less than 5%, we have a premium, etc., etc. Then with this formula, we buy the beans, we change the price every week, but always we are giving the opportunity to the farmers to gain more money if they are doing the right post-harvest handling management. And on top of that, we have origin profile. As I mentioned in the slide before, we have different origins. Then we can add between 5 and 10% on top of the prices or the premium obtained for the quality. Then we are encouraging the farming to do a better job in the farm. And if you do that, if the farmer can do that, he can obtain until 11% because the quality, but and also 5 to 10% because the origin that meet our criteria. But in the same way, we are discounted. Then below the standard, also we have some price down. Then if the maximum discount we can have is 5.5%. Then if the farmer is the choice, the farmer has the choice to have less 5.5% or max or add 10, 11% additional. It means like a 16% difference between a bad, what we consider bad cacao and a good cacao. Below these parameters, we reject the cacao. It's not received by Luker. Probably somebody else is buying the cacao, but it's not useful for our own business. Then in this way, we are convinced that the quality of the cacao, in our case, in our company, is paid and the farmers are getting more money. Always, you will have to receive more money to give more money to the farmer, but at least we can have an opportunity to get better price for a better cacao. I think it's all from my side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gomez. That's such a good example of price differentiation. And it's not many times that we see producers that are breeding and introducing such professional quality profiles. So thank you so much for your presentation. We'll move on to our next presenters from Ivory Coast, from Kava, Mr. Kwame. I think from here, the English speakers, if you could kindly switch to the translator. If you go into the link, you should be able to see join the terminal. Hello. Yes, so we're moving on to the French-speaking presenters. So we'll need to, the English speakers will need to go into the chat and then click on the link that takes us to the translation room. Mr. Isiaka Koulibaly. Could you kindly go ahead, Mr. Isiaka? My French is terrible.
All right. Brigitte or Virginie, please go ahead and invite Isiaka to take the floor once more. Let him know we can't currently hear him. And so hopefully we'll get this sorted out. And if we need to get presenters in the meantime, we can, but let's give it one more try.
OK, Monsieur Isiaka, est-ce que vous m'entendez? Ah, vous avez un problème avec votre micro. Est-ce que vous êtes capable d'ouvrir votre micro?
Please turn on your microphone. Monsieur Isiaka, merci. Thank you.
Est-ce qu'on ne vous entend pas? Est-ce que vous pouvez parler? Est-ce qu'on ne vous entend pas? Est-ce que vous pouvez parler?
We do not hear you.
OK, on ne vous entend pas, Monsieur Isiaka. We cannot hear him. In the chat, he's saying that he's asking if we can hear him. Monsieur Isiaka, est-ce que vous pouvez parler pour qu'on vous entende, pour tester le micro? Non, on ne vous entend pas. Donc, il y a un problème avec le micro.
So we can test your sound. No, we do not.
Why don't
hear
we
you.
move
There's
on
a problem
to
with
Kofi's
the
presentation
microphone.
and see if we have better luck there.
Mhm.
And we can loop back at the end if there's time.
OK.
Hey,
Monsieur
Laura.
Kofi, est-ce que vous êtes là? Monsieur Kofi, est-ce qu'on peut passer à votre présentation? Je vois pas, je pense pas qu'il soit connecté avec nous. I don't see him connected with us.
Shall we move on to Simran then, whilst we wait for?
Yes, let's. And hopefully we'll have some better luck at the end.
Yes.
Yes, I'm ready to go. Yep, I think Emma's actually presenting for us in this panel.
Yes.
But also happy to present directly if that's easier.
Can you see my screen?
No.
Then I'm going to start sharing again. Yeah. There you go.
Great. So this slide has some transitions in it, Emma, so I'll just ask you to click when it's ready for the next one. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Sorry to our friends on the western side of the continent, and hopefully they'll get their technical issues sorted. So my name is Simran Bindra. I'm one of the founders of Cocoa Kamili. We're a small operation in central Tanzania where we focus on supplying extremely high quality beans to some of the world's best chocolate makers. Our focus is on producing some of the best beans in the world and ensuring that farmers that we source our beans from are paid well for their work. Amongst sort of the ultra premium niche of craft chocolate makers, our beans are known for their unique and pretty recognizable flavor profile. Red fruit, sour apple, some underlying dried fruit notes, some figs and raisins, and some acidity as well. And through the work that we've done, we've been able to improve the relatively unknown reputation of Tanzania as an origin to being a source of fine flavored cocoa. And we're able to do this because of our commitment to quality. I think a click might work here, Anna. So beginning at the farm level, we source from with agronomy training, promotion of organic agriculture,
Screen sharing muy engorroso.
and so on. We're able to sorry, just the first click. Yeah. So through our work on farm. Okay, I'm just going to talk through it. I'm not sure if that slide is working. Can you just try clicking through once more? Okay. Yeah. So yeah.
Is this
so
what you want to see?
Yes, please. So we take so everything around our work focuses on quality, beginning at the farm level. We source from a number of smallholder farmers and we provide them with agronomy training, promotion of organic agriculture, seedlings, etc. Because the beans that we receive from our network of farmers are essentially our raw material. And so we have very strict protocols on all incoming beans, which we then ferment, dry, grade, blend, following our own in-house protocols. So we could click through. Yeah, we purchase only directly from farmers. Everything that we purchase, whether it's a small bucket like that, or half a ton of wet beans, gets subject to a visual inspection where we are checking for defects, checking for freshness, and occasionally checking bricks content as well. Second slide, or next click through, please. And then, as I said, during our fermentation protocol, we're monitoring everything throughout the whole process to make sure that all our beans meet our criteria. And this goes through from when the beans are coming in through when they're exported out of our hands to our customer base. And what we do is everything is subject to, before being approved for export, to a visual and flavor analysis. So that means that we're essentially testing 400 different samples each year. And everything that doesn't meet our standards is not exported. Something that's difficult around ensuring consistency and quality is that we source from we have 4,500 registered farmers with us, but we only export a couple hundred tons a year. That means that there's potential for a lot of variability within our system. And the genetics and the environment that we source from are relatively consistent, but with such a large number of individuals, we have this high potential for variability. And so we have to ensure that all of the farmers are following our requirements for the incoming cocoa. If the cocoa coming in doesn't meet our standards, we won't buy it. And we're able to accomplish this, ensuring that our farmers do meet our standards by paying more money. That's the end result. If farmers know that if their cocoa isn't going to meet our standards, we won't buy it. We're not interested in producing a lower quality or a lower grade cocoa. Anything that doesn't meet our standards doesn't get bought and has to be sold through alternative sales channels, which means that they're missing out on the pretty significant premiums that we're paying. And since we've been around for a couple of years now, our protocols have been pretty widely disseminated to the farmers that we work with. People understand what we need, and it's pretty rare these days for us to have to reject cocoa. Next click, please. Yeah, and then you can go through to the next slide. What we're trying to accomplish in this presentation is to explain the work, much like our friends in Colombia have explained, that by producing a better quality, we're able to produce a higher impact for our farmers. Our supply chain is shorter than most cocoa exporters. We buy directly from farmers, only through our own staff directly from our farmers. We ferment and dry, export the beans ourselves, often directly to chocolate makers. And so we ensure that we have a short, transparent supply chain that focuses on both the flavor, you can click through, as well as the story and ethics behind our beans. And then I think it's important for us to note that just one more click, I think. We're able to ensure that the impact that our higher prices that our beans command flows back to the farmers that we work with. Maintaining the future for specialty organic cocoa down in the Kilimberra Valley where we are. And by creating this focus on both the quality and the story and ethics and transparency behind our beans, our customers, our chocolate makers are able to convey that story to their end consumers as well. And so by being able to assist with that marketing, and we're able to sort of maximize the impact that we're having at the farm level with the farmers that we source from. Trying to put more money in farmers' pockets is the end goal of our company. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Simran. Thank you most kindly. Shall I try one more time for our Ivorian colleagues? Virginie, could you kindly check with them if they are ready for me to share their screen? Hi, Isiaka.
Emma will share the screen. Let's see if someone in French could ask Isiaka to begin speaking.
Okay, then.
I can ask, maybe Virginie Mefig can also try to call him. I think that the Coffee sound is working. Maybe we can also move on to Coffee. Let me try with Isiaka. Isiaka, est-ce que vous pouvez m'entendre? Est-ce que vous m'entendez? On ne vous entend pas, malheureusement. Je vois que vous parlez, mais on ne vous entend pas. Est-ce que...
Hello, Virginie?
Yes, let's go with Kofi's. Let's let Kofi share us a bit about the work of the MOCA project in Ivory Coast. We'll take advantage of his sound working.
All right, then. I'm going to move on to the French version.
Hello.
Oui, vous nous entendez? Est-ce que vous pouvez présenter?
D'accord. Vous avez le PowerPoint?
Amma, you have the presentation, right?
Yes, I'm sharing it now. I've moved right on to Caprisa.
OK. C'est à vous, Monsieur Coffey. La présentation est partagée.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Sure. I'm moving to the French version for you.
Donc, bonjour à tous, j'espère que vous me recevez. Je suis Kwame Eric. Je suis Kwame Eric, donc directeur de la coopérative Catalysing, située dans l'Indonésie du Jablin. Donc, je vais vous présenter donc les progrès réalisés donc au niveau des coopératives Cava et Catalysing en ce qui concerne les cacao des saveurs. Vous me recevez?
Oui, on vous entend très bien.
OK. Donc, il faut dire que le projet Cacao Saveur a été implémenté donc par MOCA et a été mis en place donc grâce à une consultante donc, du nom de Dorine Cassi. La Capresa est une coopérative qui est située dans la région de l'Indonésie, à l'est de la Côte d'Ivoire, précisément dans les départements d'Abangourou et de Béti, à la frontière ouest du Ghana. La Capresa compte 1929 membres. Donc, pour ajouter cela, il faut dire que dans ces 1929 membres-là, nous avons à peu près 500 femmes. Il faut dire que nous valorisons l'intégration du genre. La Capresa est une coopérative qui a été créée en 2003 et elle est devenue coopérative donc en 2014. Les différents certificats que nous avons, c'est nous avons le R et le FETRE. Lorsque nous avons proposé donc la pratique de cacao de qualité, de cacao de saveur, nous avons eu 200 membres qui ont été impliqués dans la production de ce cacao-là. Et nous avons pu commercialiser sur la campagne 2019-2020, 25 tonnes de ce cacao avec le chocolatier Guitare. Le nombre de membres donc, qui ont participé donc, à cette première livraison-là en 2021 était de 52 membres de la coopérative. Okay. Donc, le projet dans son historique a débuté en 2019 avec 7 producteurs chez Capresa et 6 chez Tava. Ils ont suivi une formation avec Mme Dorine Kassi dans le cadre du projet CNFA USDA.
Allô?
Allô? Isiaka, tu m'entends? Vous entendez Isiaka?
Oui, je t'entends.
OK.
It's great that his mic is working now. So right when you're done, I would move on to his presentation so you can continue, Capresa.
OK. Donc, les premiers échantillons qui ont été prélevés ont été analysés au laboratoire du CNRA et ces échantillons-là ont été financés donc, par le CNFA. Les 7 producteurs qui ont reçu les premières formations avec Dorine Kassi ont dispensé ces formations-là aux autres producteurs. Okay? Donc, ces producteurs se réunissaient dans les sections et réunissaient d'autres producteurs par groupe de 50 pour leur dispenser les premières formations qu'ils avaient reçues avec Dorine Kassi. Donc, de ces 7 productions-là, nous sommes passés à 11 producteurs, puis à 200 producteurs qui étaient impliqués dans le projet au niveau de la Capresa et à 82 donc au niveau de Tava. Nous avons organisé plus de 35 sessions de formation. Comme je l'ai dit, nous avions en moyenne 50 producteurs qui participaient à ces sessions de formation dans les sections. Et ces sessions de formation-là ont permis de toucher près de 500 producteurs. Les formations nécessitaient des coûts et ces coûts ont été supportés donc par la coopérative. L'enthousiasme au niveau des producteurs s'est accru avec la perspective d'avoir un meilleur prix ou un meilleur cacao. Les premiers lots de cacao ont été vendus comme cacao conventionnel avant l'obtention d'un contrat avec Kita. C'est-à-dire que le cacao, dès que nous avons commencé la campagne 2020 déjà, nous avons commencé à produire ce cacao de saveur-là, sans avoir de marché déjà pour ce cacao-là. Les premiers cacao ont été vendus donc, dans le circuit conventionnel. Et ensuite que nous avons eu le premier contrat donc, de 25 tonnes avec le chocolatier Kita. OK? Donc, des formations spécifiques ont été réalisées et des formations spécifiques ont été basées sur l'apprentissage par dégustation. Il faut savoir qu'au début, nous étions tous orientés. Hein? It's good?
Je pense que c'est moi.
Oh, OK. Continue.
Bonsoir à tous. Excusez-moi, j'avais un problème technique. Je ne sais pas si mon binôme a souligné, mais c'est une présentation jumelée en fait. Et donc, je vais prendre la main à ce niveau-là. Alors, il faut noter que des formations spécifiques basées sur l'apprentissage par dégustation ont été réalisées pour comprendre l'importance de respecter les bonnes pratiques agricoles pour la production d'un cacao de saveur. Alors, l'objectif, c'était d'optimiser et de développer les compétences des agriculteurs pour fermenter et sécher le cacao afin d'obtenir constamment la meilleure saveur de qualité et de leur fève. Prochain slide, s'il vous plaît. OK. Alors, après un an de soutien, dans le cadre du projet MOCLA, les échantillons de fèves des producteurs sélectionnés ont été envoyés à des dégustateurs de cacao de renommée internationale pour leur avis, notamment Ed Higuain de Cacao Excellence et de John Theo de Gistore Chocolate. Alors, après cette dégustation-là, nous avons obtenu un certain nombre de résultats. Il y a 60% étaient acceptables pour un score de 7 à 7,5, sans note de goût indésirable. Et 40% de ces échantillons-là ont été évalués, ont mis en évidence des scores de 8 ou plus sur l'échelle d'évaluation sensorielle du cacao, selon Cacao of Excellence. Les profils de saveur les mieux notés ont été commentés comme profil de saveur surprenant et très intéressant. Alors, ce tableau-là, il est là pour, comment dirais-je, pour illustrer en fait les chiffres qui ont été obtenus. On peut avoir le prochain slide, s'il vous plaît. Alors, il faut noter que pour la bonne marche du projet, le projet de qualité doit reposer sur certaines bases qui sont très importantes. La coopérative. Alors, la coopérative, elle a besoin d'un contrat qui est spécifique pour planifier les productions. Sinon, elle s'expose au risque de dégradation du cacao stocké et de démotivation des producteurs qui sont engagés. Le producteur a besoin de se sentir soutenu, encadré par la coopérative, car il doit faire face à de nombreuses difficultés. Le manque de main-d'œuvre, par exemple, la lenteur dans le processus de production de cacao de qualité, la pression du voisinage pour produire rapidement et du cacao de qualité standard. Le manque d'équipement, tels que les séchoirs, les bananiers. Pour encourager le producteur, la coopérative, qu'est-ce qu'elle fait? Elle fournit des intrants et des moyens de séchage. Elle accorde une prime qualité physique et sensorielle. Next. Suivant, s'il vous plaît. OK. Alors, pour le dernier slide, nous avons énuméré les objectifs, les défis et les perspectives. Alors, en termes d'objectifs, pour produire du cacao de meilleure qualité, produire du cacao, l'objectif premier, c'est de produire du cacao de meilleure qualité à un prix plus rentable pour nos membres. Et également, il faut un gain pour les producteurs. Il faut noter également une augmentation du poids des fèves, revenu amélioré par cette pratique-là. Il faut également noter une amélioration de la productivité des arbres, amélioration des revenus encore, et la prime pour la qualité physique et gustative. Pour les défis, il faut noter que le cacao de saveur nécessite plus de main-d'œuvre et d'adaptation aux bonnes pratiques agricoles. L'absence également de contrats de commercialisation décourage les producteurs. Il faut noter également que la production durable de cacao de saveur coûte cher à la coopérative, car elle nécessite une formation régulière des producteurs. Pour les perspectives, c'est important de noter que pour poursuivre la production de cacao de meilleure qualité avec une meilleure saveur, il faut aussi noter qu'on doit établir un partenariat durable avec les chocolatiers qui nous soutiendront dans ce processus-là. Il faut également impliquer, on a également pour objectif d'impliquer au moins 50% de nos membres dans la production de ce cacao aromatique de qualité-là. Je vous remercie. C'était le dernier slide.
I think that's your last slide.
Yes, that is, he's completed the presentation.
Right. We are running low on time. We're eating into our Q&A session now. Is Kofi ready to present, or shall I move on to Max, please?
We need to move on to Max, but For all in the audience, this entire presentation, including both French and English versions of all of these slides, will be uploaded to the event website after the event. So let's encourage everyone to loop back and double check in on these slides from Cava, part of EcoKim, and Capresa. Thanks, Ama.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so the Max can take over the screen.
Okay. Hello, everyone. If you wish to see me full screen, because I won't be sharing my screen, I will be sharing just my camera. So if you're interested, please pin me the center of your screen. I'm hearing lots of background noise. I don't know if someone can. Okay, that's good. No. Okay, looks like it's working. I would like to reconnect to what Ed Seguin said at the beginning, that knowledge is key. And this is so right at so many levels. And unfortunately, we haven't heard much about knowledge in the rest of the presenters. And what I mean by that is that creating value is basically communicating knowledge. It's not more than that. We have heard about quality in a negative term. I mean, I close my doors if I don't like what you have for me, or I discount if I don't like it, which is okay because it tells the farmer, if you don't give me what I want, you're missing out on an opportunity. But this doesn't really solve the problem on how to create value in cocoa. I will be sharing with you a few slides, but really just a few, and some minutes of footage taken from a farm, which is a model. Creating value in cocoa. Try, can pin myself? Okay, I can. Well, it's basically about strategy, about what you want to do and how you intend to create value. In our case, and number one is Fuparoca, which is a foundation which we sponsor. We have actually founded this foundation, and this foundation has the role of communicating all the knowledge that we have acquired as a company and pass it through to the farmers, both in terms of microbiology, taste, good agricultural practices, fermentation, and drying. Without Fuparoca and its more than 4,000 farmers, all the other efforts on quality would be meaningless because there wouldn't be knowledge sharing. And so how do we create value? We create value by R&D, research and development. We are very proud of this. What I mean research and development starts from the terroir and goes on to microbiology and methods of fermentation and drying. Then focus on innovation. One country cannot be equal to itself for 5 centuries. There's something so wrong in that. And then cocoa processing. The way we process cocoa is, of course there is value in tradition, but there is also lots of value in things that still have to be discovered. Then, of course, differentiation through knowledge, sustainability and certification seen together, not just compliance, but something that really has to become part of our way of thinking. And again, a direct relationship with chocolate makers, again, because we need to share knowledge and know from the chocolate makers, but the chocolate makers also have to know something, to apprehend something from the farmers. And of course, the big word that now is in everybody's mouth, which is traceability, which basically means transparency and knowing where the cacao, where the product is coming from. Next. So application of, I will go to the second part of the slide, the application of microbiology and biochemistry to the mystery and the creation of aromas in fermentation. It's not just enough to think of fermentation as like a magic wand which will transform a bad cacao into something magnificent. Sometimes, and here I totally agree with Gary, the best course of action is not fermenting at all. or tuning the fermentation according to the very specific flavor we are after, or also trying to adapt to the flavor precursors that are inside the beans. Not all beans are created equal, and this is particularly true in the Dominican Republic, where we don't have endemic plants. All the cacao we have has been brought in several importation waves by the Spaniards and later by state-owned entities in between the 16th and the 19th century. I would like now to show you something very practical about a farm. This farm is 3 hectares, just 3 hectares big, and it was an experiment that basically Elvi and I, and we'll see who Elvi is, started 4 years ago. We took genotype from Ecuador, EET clones, that were present in the Dominican Republic since the 60s and very well neglected, and we planted it a 3-hectare farm without any type of sophistication. I'll put myself in the corner and from time to time speak over the footage. Hello everyone, we're here with my friend Elvi. We've been working together now for I think 17 years. Yes, our gray hair tell the truth. And we are going to tackle a very important subject in cacao, which is how to create value. And value is intended as value in terms of money for the farmer, for all the other, hopefully not too many persons in between the farmer and the consumer. And of course value also to the consumer in terms of taste, in terms of novelty, in terms of sophistication. Some of the pillars of value in a farm. And the first is right before us all, which is the land, the earth, what is normally called the terroir or terruño in Espanol. And it is the combination of the weather, climate, and the chemical and physical structure of the earth. So this is number 2 in value is genetics. Why? First, because it is a clearly distinguishable quality in terms of taste and aroma, and a very sought after one. So number 1, terroir. Number 2, genetics. Here we have two clones among the ones planted in this farm. This is clone 250, ET 250, ES 228. They are different, but they all have in common this very peculiar native floral flavor, which is something that cannot be created or synthesized afterwards. Now we're going to do something very simple, but it's also absolutely important. Opening the pods. Sometimes it is a neglected step of the process. People don't think deeply about what that means. Opening the pods means that the pulp comes into contact with the air and the environment. So immediately there is a instantaneous inoculation of wild yeasts present in the farm. So this is something that happens naturally, but afterwards you will see that science will help clarify this fantastic mystery, and thanks to this knowledge we can build up even more value to the farm, to the fruit, to the chocolate, to the consumer, and to the farmer. This is one of the things that really distinguishes standard cacao from fine flavor. The pulp smells like a perfume, Chanel No. 5 for us, or even better if you want. And the pulp is much, much sweeter than... That is really something very noticeable, that the pulp is absolutely much, much sweeter than in the amelonado type of beans. That farm is just shy of 4 years old, But look at the productivity, and most of all, look at the size of the trees. We will keep them at maximum 3 meters, and they're all grafted, and this makes such a huge difference. Please go on.
Standard amelonado cacao, which we are used to, and I was also used to when I worked in Africa. Completely different taste. Mm-hmm.
There you are. Then terroir, genetics, and the opening of the pods. It is not something fungible. It's not something that can be done in a sloppy manner, because that is the first time of inoculation. So the pods need to be absolutely ripe, and it needs to be done in clear condition. This idea, this old messy idea that if you throw it somewhere and then put leaves on top and then allow for this sort of casual, random sloppiness to work, it is wrong, basically. Let's go on.
So here we are simulating in small scale what happens in large scale. These are vibrating sieves. We receive the cacao baba from our farms and the farmers, and then the cacao passes through this sieve in order to separate the placentas from the beans. These placentas go to these big beans. This will be fermented and used for compost, so it goes back to the farm. It will be crushed, fermented, and used as compost.
This is such a crucial part, the fact of removing the placentas, because they ferment in a very, very different manner. They're made basically of cellulose, whereas the pulp is just very little fiber and then organic acids and sugars.
And now here we create value through developing the flavors that potentially are already inside the beans. These are called flavor.
This is very important. Fermentation is not just something that you throw whatever type of cacao is there, leave it for as long as you can, and then it will magically create value. It doesn't work that way. There are so many fermentations, and one of the most difficult is just not fermenting at all. Sometimes if you want a nutty and absolutely, let's say, green and deep flavor, the challenge is not fermenting it, is how do I stop that from happening and keep all the natural goodness inside the beans. In other cases, you will be inclined to do a temperature-triggered fermentation because you just want the yeasts to act. So it will stop it at 32, 34 degrees. And in other cases, yes, you want to go longer, but the longer you go, the deeper the flavor, but it will also, you run the risk of losing a lot of the finer flavors, and the polyphenols also will degrade because of the polyphenol oxidase. So fermentation is not just something that takes time and boxes.
Precursors. Now we need to give them the fuel they need to fully develop. So at this stage, we are perhaps not creating, but revealing the value that is inside the beans. If fermentation is not properly done, these flavors will not develop and will destroy all the flavor that we have created so far for the farmer, for the consumer, and in terms of money or overall value for the market. So this cacao came yesterday. So we are in the first phase of fermentation, where basically the sugars are being eaten by the yeast that we have mentioned before. This is just to indicate that all the steps that we have seen in this journey.
Well, Laura told me that you have to say goodbye, but then before saying goodbye, I would like to share then the last slide of the presentation, which basically summarizes what is the difference between creating value and not creating value in a farm. You can see in this, it was a spreadsheet, now it's just a slide, so it is not, you cannot do sensitivity on it, but let's suppose that we are at the terminal price of 2,500 and you have a base yield of your farm of 700 kilos per hectare.
Right. So our session is going to close automatically. Thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate it. Thank you to all the presenters and the audience. And please check back on the website for all of the presentations. And if I'm still live, I would be remiss to not say a huge thank you to Virginie Mafeng from WCF and John Kehoe of Guittard for all their help behind the scenes. Thank you to all the presenters and thank you to the audience for joining us.